The guard assignment. The hallway lights blinked as James Carter rushed through the corridors of the military ship Vanguard Prime. His boots echoed on the metal floor. It was late, almost midnight, and he had just been called to the command deck. No one explained why. James was a human security guard, not special, not high rank, just a man with a gun and a job to protect others. So, being called at this hour felt strange. As he entered the deck, Captain Rowe stood near the holomap. Her face was tight with stress. Around her, officers whispered and typed on glowing screens. "Carter," she said without looking up. "You're getting a new assignment." James frowned. "At midnight? It's urgent. We've just taken on a guest from the Arcanis Empire." James blinked. The Arcanis were one of the oldest alien races in the galaxy. Beautiful, dangerous, and very powerful. Most humans had never seen one up close. "Guest?" he asked. "Like a diplomat?" The captain finally looked at him. "Royalty. A princess." James let out a low whistle. "And I'm guarding her?" Captain Rowe nodded. "Her people requested a human, said they trust humans more than the others on this ship." James raised an eyebrow. That sounded like a lie. But he didn't say it out loud. "There's one problem," the captain continued. "Due to a systems error, the only available secure room is yours." James paused. "You're saying we're sharing a room?" Captain Rowe crossed her arms. "One room, one bed. She doesn't sleep much, so you'll manage." James rubbed his face. "Great. This won't be awkward at all." The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, James's room was small but clean. One bed, a desk, a locker. And standing near the window was someone who didn't look like they belonged on any human ship. Princess Solara stood tall, with glowing silver skin and long black hair that shimmered like ink. Her eyes were deep violet without pupils glowing faintly in the dark. She didn't move as James entered. He cleared his throat. Welcome. I guess this is our room now." She turned to face him slowly. "You are loud." James blinked. "Sorry? Your thoughts?" she said, her voice calm but strange. "They shout." He frowned. "You can hear my thoughts?" "Only the surface ones," she replied. "You are afraid, curious, and annoyed." "Well, yeah," James said. "This isn't exactly a normal assignment." She stepped forward, tilting her head slightly. "I do not require sleep. You may take the bed." He shook his head. "We'll figure it out. Let's just try to survive this week without killing each other." Solara didn't laugh. She just watched him for a moment longer, then turned back to the window. James sat on the bed, still in uniform. The ship felt quiet. Too quiet. "Why are you here?" he asked. She didn't look back. "There are talks between the empires. My father sent me as a symbol of peace, but not everyone agrees with peace." He heard something in her voice. Tiredness? Fear? "Well," he said, "you're safe here. That's my job now." She looked at him again. "We will see." Later that night, James lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Solara sat near the window, her eyes closed but not asleep. Suddenly the ship shook. A low hum ran through the floor. James sat up. "What was that?" Solara stood quickly. "Something is wrong." Before James could move, a red light began to flash on the wall. A robotic voice filled the room. "Security breach in royal quarters." James's heart jumped. He looked around. "But we're still here." No one came in. He grabbed his weapon from under the bed and moved to the door. It was locked from inside. No sign of damage, no noise, no visitors. Solara looked calm, but her eyes glowed brighter. "This is a warning," she said softly. "Someone wants me gone." James stared at her. "Then we've got a big problem." He didn't notice her glance at the wall behind him, where something small, dark, and almost invisible crawled across the ceiling. Close quarters. James Carter didn't sleep that night, even after the security alarm stopped flashing, and the system showed no signs of a real breach. Something in the room felt wrong. He didn't know what it was, but Zalara did. She hadn't spoken again after her strange warning. She simply sat near the window, her glowing eyes half closed, as if listening to something far away. James paced the room, weapon still in hand. His mind kept replaying the alarm, security breach in royal quarters. Why? The door hadn't opened. No one was seen. But something had been there. He felt it. Watching. Waiting. When morning arrived, the ship's artificial lights shifted to day mode. Still, James hadn't slept. He stared at the single bed and sighed. Then, without warning, "You spoke my name in your sleep," Zalara said. James turned. "I didn't sleep." She raised one eyebrow, elegant and unreadable. "Then why did I hear it, repeated 3 times with your heartbeat rising?" James hesitated. "Maybe you dreamt it." "I don't dream," she said softly. "Dreams belong to those with peace inside." Her voice was quiet, but something about it made the room colder. James didn't know what to say, so he grabbed his jacket. "I need coffee," he muttered. "Do Arcanis drink coffee?" She tilted her head. "Only before war." In the mess hall, James sat with his old friend Lieutenant Mira, trying to explain what had happened. No door opened. No cameras. "Caught anything," he said. But the alarm went off, and Zalara, she knew something was there. Mira sipped her drink, her dark eyes focused. "You sure you're not just jumpy? That bed's not big enough for one person, let alone 2. "I didn't even lie down," James muttered. "I don't trust her. But I don't think she's the danger." Mira leaned forward. "That room you're in, it's shielded. But if the alarm triggered, then someone tried to enter it. That's not normal." James looked around. The mess hall was full of both humans and aliens talking and laughing. Nothing felt wrong. But that made him even more uneasy. "Can you check the power logs?" he asked. "If something used energy to get through the wall or ceiling, there might be a trace." Mira nodded. "I'll run it quiet. No reports. If someone is watching, we don't want to alert them." James was about to reply when a sharp pain shot through his head. A flash, for just a second. Darkness, a cold hand on his chest. Then it was gone. "You okay?" Mira asked. James blinked. "Yeah, just headache." But his hands were shaking. That night he returned to the room. Zalara was already there, standing perfectly still beside the window. The stars outside moved slowly as the ship glided through warp space. She didn't turn as he entered. "I saw something," James said quietly. "Not with my eyes, like a shadow inside my head." Now she turned. "There are things in this galaxy," she said, "that do not open doors. They do not walk or breathe. They enter minds. Hide in your thoughts. Wait until you are weak." James felt cold again. "You think that's what triggered the alarm?" "I know it was," she said. He looked at her, trying to understand. "Why are you really here, Zalara? What's your mission?" She walked toward him, slow and graceful. "The same as yours, perhaps. To survive." James stared into her eyes. For the first time, they looked almost human, tired, lonely. Then the lights in the room flickered. The hum of the ship dimmed. The air became thick. James raised his weapon. From the corner of his eye, he saw it. A shape. No features. No face. Just a ripple in the air like heat waves over desert sand, floating, moving towards Zalara. He fired. The bullet passed through the shape, but the ripple vanished. Zalara didn't flinch. "It was testing us," she whispered. James backed away. "What was that?" She touched her temple. "A hunter. From the void between stars. We call them whispers. They do not kill with claws. They use fear, memory, regret." James sat on the bed, breathing hard. "Why would something like that follow you?" She looked at him. "Because I carry something it wants." "What?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she placed her hand gently on his forehead. Her skin was cold. I can protect your mind, she said, but only if you allow me in. In how? He asked. She leaned closer. A bond, temporary, shared thoughts, shared pain. James froze. What happens if I say no? She didn't blink. Then next time you will not see it coming. That night they both lay on the same bed, back to back, not touching. But something connected them now. A thread in the dark. As James drifted into uneasy sleep, one final thought entered his mind, not his own. Do not dream. It listens. The invisible threat James Carter had never feared silence before, but now, inside his shared quarters with Princess Zilara, the silence felt like a predator. Heavy. Watching. Waiting. It had been 2 days since the bond. He couldn't explain it, only feel it. A thread connecting his mind to hers. A quiet presence that was not quite him and not quite her. Thoughts sometimes blurred. Dreams became memories. Some his, some not. He no longer slept deeply. Whenever he drifted too far, something pulled him back. The whispers, Zilara called them. Creatures from the void between galaxies. Not physical, not truly alive, but real. James knew they were real now, and they were inside the ship. The command deck was busy when James arrived. Alarms hadn't sounded again, but strange events were piling up. Crew members reported missing time, moments they couldn't remember. One engineer claimed she saw herself walking down a hallway while she was in bed. Another swore a voice whispered his deepest secret out loud in front of others. Captain Rowe dismissed most of it as stress. Long voyages cause tension, imagination. But James knew better. He had felt the presence. He had seen the ripple. He found Lieutenant Mira at the security hub scanning logs. Anything new? James asked. She looked up, tired. More anomalies. But it's weird, they don't show up on thermal, sound, or cameras. Whatever it is, it's smart. Hides from tech. James leaned closer. We need to think differently. It's not breaking in, it's already here. Mira glanced around and lowered her voice. You think someone brought it? James hesitated. Maybe. Or maybe it came for her. Mira stared at him. The princess? He nodded slowly. There's something she's not telling me. Back in his quarters, James found Zilara sitting cross-legged on the floor. Her eyes were closed, her hands on her knees, palms up. Around her floated small objects, his toothbrush, a spoon, a pen, all spinning slowly. You meditating or decorating? He asked. She didn't open her eyes. I'm listening. To what? She exhaled. The objects dropped. To the ship. It speaks. When it's afraid. James walked in, locking the door. Tell me about the whispers, all of it. Zilara opened her eyes. They are not one being. They are many. But they move with one mind. They slip between shadows, feed on emotion, fear, regret, shame. They do not touch. They infect. James sat on the edge of the bed. You said they want something from you. She looked at him. A memory. A location I carry. My people hid something long ago. A gate. The key is not an object. It is knowledge. And they want it. James frowned. So they're trying to scare you into revealing it? Not just scare, she said quietly. Break me. Then take what remains. The room dimmed, and the lights flickered. Again. That night, James placed a sensor under his bed. It wasn't much. Just a motion detector wired to his old wristwatch. If anything moved while they slept, he'd know. He lay down beside Zilara. They didn't speak. But in the silence, thoughts slipped between them. Not words, images. A storm. A broken world. A girl locked behind glass, watched by silver-eyed strangers. James didn't ask if it was real. He knew it was. Sleep came hard. And then the alarm buzzed. James shot up. The sensor flashed red. Something had moved. but the room was still. Solara was already sitting up, alert. James scanned the walls, the ceiling. "Nothing's there," he said, voice tight. Solara's eyes glowed faintly. It never comes the same way twice. Then something creaked. Soft. Behind the wall. James stood, weapon drawn. The wall shifted. No, rippled. For a second, James saw the outline of a figure, like a shadow behind frosted glass. Tall, thin, arms too long. It didn't move toward them. It just watched, then vanished. James turned to Solara. "Why isn't it attacking?" She looked shaken for the first time. "It doesn't need to. Every time it comes, you lose a piece of yourself." James looked down. His hand was shaking. He didn't remember picking up his gun. He didn't remember pulling the safety off. He didn't remember what he had just been thinking. "Something's wrong with me," he whispered. Solara stood, placing her hand on his forehead. A soft glow pulsed between them. "It has touched your mind, but not yet taken it." He swallowed. "How do we fight something that doesn't exist in our world?" She paused. "By remembering who we are, before we forget completely." And the next morning, James went to Mira again. He looked worse, pale, tired, twitchy. He gave her the motion sensor. It caught something. "Look at the patterns." She plugged it into the console. As the data loaded, her expression changed. "This isn't normal movement," she whispered. "It's like..." The room shifted. James nodded. "Whatever it is, it can bend space or time." Mira looked around, then leaned in. "There's something else, the energy readings from your room. Match a signal we found on deck 12. "What's on deck 12? He asked. She hesitated. "It's locked. Storage. Off limits." James frowned. "What kind of storage?" Mira lowered her voice to a whisper. "Experimental weapons. And old tech. Stuff from before the coalition." James's eyes narrowed. "You think this thing came from there?" Mira didn't answer. She didn't have to. That night, James told Solara what Mira had said. She looked calm, but her silence said more than her words. "There is something sleeping on this ship," she said finally. "And I fear I'm not the only reason it woke up." James sat beside her. "Then we're all in danger." She nodded. "And soon it will stop whispering." He looked at her. "What then?" She turned her glowing eyes toward him. "It will scream." Psychic Bond James Carter stood in the middle of the corridor outside Deck 12, staring at the locked bulkhead. No lights, no guards, no reason for this part of the ship to feel colder than the rest, and yet it did. Deck 12 wasn't just restricted. It was abandoned. Not even engineers came here. The air smelled metallic. The walls hummed too softly, like they were hiding something beneath their surface. He placed his hand on the door. Nothing happened. Behind him, Princess Solara stood silently. As usual, she moved without sound, like she didn't belong to gravity. "I can feel it," she said. "The darkness, it's thick here." James looked over his shoulder. "You said you could protect my mind." Solara nodded once. "But you're already slipping." He frowned. "What do you mean?" She stepped forward. Her fingers hovered near his forehead, but didn't touch. "You forgot your sister's name in the mess hall yesterday." James's eyes widened. "What?" "You..." Remembered it 2 seconds later, but there was a pause, like something cut the memory out and handed it back. James felt a chill crawl up his spine. "This isn't just fear, James," Solara whispered. "This is erasure. Slowly it will take your identity, until there is nothing left to steal." James backed away from the door. "Then we don't wait." He turned to her. "Link us. For real this time." Solara's eyes glowed brighter. "A full psychic bond is not like before. You will see me, as I truly am, and I will see you." James nodded. "Do it." She raised both hands and touched the sides of his face. Instantly his vision blurred. The hallway vanished, and then he fell. James opened his eyes in a memory that wasn't his. He stood on a glass platform over a burning planet. He was smaller, shorter. A child? No. A girl. A young version of Zalara, standing behind a thick wall of glass. Scientists, alien, not human, stood on the other side watching her, talking about her like she wasn't alive. "She's stabilizing," one said. "Emotion flatline." "Begin memory implantation," said another. Zalara screamed. Her voice echoed inside James's skull. The child Zalara beat on the glass. "Let me go. I am not a weapon." The room shook. Lights exploded. One scientist flew backward, body twitching. Another voice echoed across the lab. "She's waking up too fast. Shut the gate." James tried to move but couldn't. He was her, feeling her pain, her rage. Then the memory shattered like glass. He landed hard in another moment. This time it was his memory, Earth. A hospital. His mother on a bed, pale and weak. He was holding her hand. "I wish I could protect you," he whispered to her. "You always do," she had replied. "But you need to live your own life, James. Let go." He never had. That's why he joined the military. That's why he took risks. Why he never allowed himself to love again. He had always been the protector, even when it hurt. Back in reality, James gasped for air. The psychic bond broke with a jolt. Zalara stumbled backward, shaking. "I saw everything," he said quietly. She didn't speak. "You were created," James whispered. "Not just born. They designed you for something." She finally nodded. "To be a gate." James stared at her. "A what?" Zalara looked hollow now. Like speaking it made it more real. "Long ago, my people discovered a creature trapped between stars. It had no form, only hunger. They believed they could use it as a weapon, so they built a prison. Inside you. Inside my mind." James sat down. "The whispers. They're just fragments. Pieces leaking out of the thing that lives inside you." Zalara's voice trembled. "It isn't alive. It is hunger itself. No name, no shape. They call it the Hollow One. I was made to carry the key, but something went wrong. It began to wake." James shook his head. "So now it's trying to fully enter this world through you." Zalara nodded. "And you." James looked up sharply. "Me? You bonded with me. Now it has a link to you too." James stood, panicked. "So what happens if it fully wakes?" Zalara closed her eyes. "It speaks once and all minds on this ship die. Thoughts melt. Memories vanish. Whole civilizations collapse from within." James took a long breath. "Then we don't let it wake." Later that night, the ship shook violently. Alarms blared. Power drop on deck 12. Life signs detected where none should be. James grabbed his gear and ran with Zalara beside him. When they reached the deck, it was worse than expected. Metal, walls twisted, lights flickered like dying stars. Crew members stood frozen, eyes wide, mouths open, unmoving. "Are they dead?" James whispered. "No," Zalara said. "Not yet." A sound filled the corridor. Not a voice, not a scream, a thought. "Let me in." James dropped to his knees. The voice wasn't spoken, but it echoed inside his brain, like it belonged there, like it had always been there. Zalara cried out, grabbing her head. Then, behind them, Mira arrived. "Weapon raised! James!" she shouted. "Get away from her!" "What?" he gasped. "Mira, she's the infection," Mira yelled. "She's the key. I've seen the reports. If she bonds again, the Hollow One crosses over." Zalara turned slowly. "Then shoot me. But the Hollow One won't die with me. It will find another." Mira hesitated. James stood, weapon lowered. "We don't fight it with bullets," he said. "We fight it with memories." Mira looked confused. "What?" James turned to Zalara. "You said it erases us, bit by bit. So let's give it something too heavy to carry." She blinked. A memory it can't consume. A trauma it can't twist. James nodded. You still have that lab memory? She frowned. Why? Because I do too. And I'm going to let it in. James sat down in the center of the hallway. Zalara sat beside him. They reached out, fingers touching. The bond flared again. The hollow one surged. The ship shook. Lights exploded. But James pushed forward. Not with weapons, but with memory. His mother's voice. Her last breath. Her strength. Zalara shared hers. Her screams. The betrayal. The glass cage. Together they opened the door. And inside, they forced the hollow one to see what it had never seen. Human pain that did not break. Alien rage that turned into hope. The hollow one screamed, but no one heard it. Except them. Then it vanished. For now. As silence returned to the ship, Zalara fell against James. You held it back, she whispered. James nodded, exhausted. But it's not over, she added. It never truly sleeps. James looked out into the stars. Then we don't either. The traitor, the hollow one, was gone. At least that's what the silence made James Carter want to believe. But silence lies. It hides in the moments between blinks, in the quiet footsteps down an empty hallway, in the second when a friend looks at you, and you're no longer sure who's behind their eyes. 3 days had passed since James and Zalara pushed the creature back into the void. The ship had stabilized. Systems returned to normal. Crew members stopped reporting hallucinations. No more whispering voices. No more flickering lights. But something else had taken its place. Paranoia. People avoided eye contact. Officers spoke in hushed voices. And some crew vanished from their duty posts without explanation. James noticed the change first in Mira. She stopped smiling. She stopped checking in, and she stopped asking about Zalara. James stood in the weapons locker room, double-checking his gear. He didn't like the feeling in his gut. In war, silence always meant something was sneaking up behind you. As he adjusted his sidearm, the door slid open. Mira stepped inside. She looked like she hadn't slept. Still breathing? She asked, trying to sound casual. Barely, James replied. But I'll take it. There was a long pause. Too long. James turned to her slowly. You haven't been around. Everything okay? Mira shrugged. Just busy. Command's watching everyone now. Ever since that thing. She didn't say Hollow One. No one did anymore. James nodded. You ever get answers about Deck 12? She froze for a second. A flicker of something in her eyes. Then she looked away. Nothing new. Lie. James felt it like static in the air. You always used to share theories, he said softly. Even the crazy ones. Mira turned back toward him. Her face was calm, but too calm. Not everything's a theory, James. Some things are orders. He frowned. Whose orders? She didn't answer. And that was answer enough. Later, James met Zalara in the observation dome. Stars shimmered beyond the glass, endless and cold. She's hiding something, James said. Mira, she's acting like someone else. Zalara sat cross-legged, her hands resting on her knees. Perhaps she is. James stared at her. You think it's the Hollow One again? Zalara shook her head. Not its shadow. This is human deception, which is harder to see. James sighed. Great. We survived a mind-eating space god, and now we've got spies. Zalara opened her eyes. Then we find them. They started quietly. James used an old clearance code to access Mira's private logs. Zalara helped bypass the encrypted sections. What they found wasn't just suspicious. It was treason, hidden transmissions. Encrypted signals sent from Mira's terminal to an unknown relay, deep inside Coalition space. The files were labeled with a simple tag, ARC Protocol, Terminate Host Carrier. James leaned back, heart pounding. Host carrier? He whispered. They mean you. Zalara said nothing. James looked at her. You knew. She nodded slowly. My father made a deal with the coalition long ago. If I became unstable, if the Hollow One began to awaken, they were to end me. Quietly. James stood furious. So they placed someone here, someone I trust, to kill you. To protect the galaxy, Zalara said. To control it, James snapped. They're not protecting peace. They're silencing threats. He looked at her. You're not a threat. You're a prisoner. She met his eyes. Not anymore. James confronted Mira in one of the old maintenance halls. No cameras, no listening walls. Just cold steel and old secrets. You've been sending kill orders, he said flatly. Encrypted. Tagged ARC. Mira didn't even try to deny it. She just stared at him, disappointed. I warned you, James, from the beginning. You weren't supposed to get close to her. He felt the rage burn inside him. She saved the ship. We both did. Mira took a step closer. You bonded with something ancient. You don't understand what that means. It's not just psychic, it's parasitic. She's not a parasite, he snapped. Mira shook her head. You think this is about her being evil? It's about what she contains, and now you've connected to it. You're compromised. James pulled his weapon. Don't. She didn't flinch. You're not going to shoot me, James. You're still the same kid who tried to save everyone, even people who don't deserve it. He kept the gun raised. Why didn't you report me? She smiled sadly. Because I hoped you'd come to your senses. He lowered the gun, but only slightly. I won't help you kill her. Mira stepped back into the shadows. Then you've chosen your side. That night, Zalara stared out at the stars, her expression unreadable. She won't stop, James said. She has orders. The moment you show weakness, she'll act. Zalara looked at him. Then I cannot show weakness. He stepped closer. You're not alone. She turned to him. I've always been alone. Not anymore, he whispered. She studied him, eyes glowing softly. Then it's time I show you everything. James's brow furrowed. I thought you already did. She shook her head. No. The Hollow One was not the only thing I carried. She reached out her hand. He took it. The bond surged again, and this time, it didn't take him into memories. It took him into a vision of the future. He stood on a battlefield, burning ships in the sky. Earth's moon shattered into dust. Zalara stood beside him, but she was different. Taller, eyes darker, power radiating from her like a sun. In front of them stood thousands of beings, human and alien alike, all bowed. She turned to James and said just 2 words. They chose me. Then a second Zalara, weak, bleeding, alone, in a prison, screaming his name. He saw both versions. One a queen, the other a prisoner of war, and in the middle, him, the deciding force. James woke up gasping, chest heaving. Zalara stood over him. You saw it, he nodded. I don't know which path is true, she said, but I know one leads to death. James looked her in the eye. And the other? She held his gaze. Revolution. Exposed alarms were supposed to mean fire, hull breach, or enemy attack, but the alarm James Carter woke up to was worse. It was internal. Security lockdown. Class 7 alert. Clearance override initiated by command control. All unauthorized personnel to be detained. James sat upright on his narrow bunk. The ship rumbled not from external threat but from movement. Orders, boots, guns. He looked across the room. Zalara was gone. For the first time since they'd been assigned together, her side of the room was empty, and the door was locked. From the outside. The corridor outside was chaos. Red lights strobed across the walls. Sirens blared. Security officers, his own people, moved with full armor and rifles. Commander James Carter, a mechanical voice said from the speaker. By direct order of High Command, you are relieved of duty. Please remain in place. Not a chance, James muttered. He pulled open the emergency vent above his bed and climbed in. Just before the door to his room blasted open with a flash grenade and 2 armored soldiers stormed in. They weren't here to arrest him. They were here to kill him. Crawling through the narrow maintenance shafts, James felt the ship groaning beneath him, not from damage but from betrayal. The Vanguard Prime had been his home for 3 years. He had trusted its crew, its mission. Now, they were hunting him like a criminal. And somewhere, Solara was alone. Worse, she might already be in custody, or, worse than that, eliminated. He reached a hidden access point and dropped into a storage room. From there, he hacked into an unused terminal and pulled up ship-wide orders. His blood ran cold. Operation Arcfire. Subject Solara 17, marked for immediate execution. Failure to comply results in termination of entire squad. Protocol signed. By Coalition Command. They weren't just trying to silence her, they were trying to erase her, and anyone who stood in the way. Solara, meanwhile, had already seen it coming. She had felt the shift in the ship's energy, the thoughts growing colder, the collective fear turning into something worse. Obedience. The Coalition feared the Hollow One, yes. But they feared her more. They didn't want containment anymore. They wanted control, and if they couldn't have, she had to die. She moved through the lower decks where engineering staff had been evacuated. Alone, dressed in a stolen crew uniform, she no longer looked royal, but her mind still burned like a star. And somewhere in that ship, James was still with her. She could feel it. The bond remained, even now, even through walls, even through lies. James broke into the communications lab next. He needed eyes. He hacked into internal cams, what was left of them. What he saw chilled him. Mira, wearing black ops armor. Walking calmly beside the captain, they were tracking Solara's last signal, Deck 8, Cryo Bay. But that wasn't the worst part. James fast-forwarded the feed. In one frame, Solara walked alone. In the next, 5 armed guards surrounded her. In the last, she dropped to her knees as something invisible knocked the breath from her body. She wasn't dead, but she would be soon, unless he moved now. James had one advantage. The bond. It pulsed inside his mind. Not words, not images, but direction. He followed it step by step, hallway by hallway, ducking between fire doors and sensor blockers until he reached Cryo Bay. The room was filled with frozen pods. Inside them, former officers, failed experiments, and other secrets the Coalition wanted forgotten. Now it was a prison. He spotted Solara strapped to a medical chair. A containment field pulsed around her. Her skin was pale, her eyes closed but not unconscious. A low hum filled the room. A weapon charger. Tall figure stood nearby. Mira. She didn't hesitate. "I knew you'd come," she said. James raised his weapon. "Then you know how this ends." Mira didn't even flinch. "She's too dangerous, James. She's the reason this ship is still here. She's the reason it's under threat." James stepped closer. She held it back. She didn't. Let the Hollow One in. She could have, but she didn't. Mira's jaw tightened. That thing inside her is ancient, beyond us. And now it's inside you too. You think they'll ever let you go home after this? "I don't care about going home," James said. "I care about the truth." He turned his gun to the power module running the containment field. "I'll give you one chance," he said. "Walk away." Mira didn't move. "You shoot that, you're no longer one of us." "I was never one of you," he said, and pulled the trigger. The containment field exploded. Sparks flew. Solara gasped as the psychic limiter around her head shattered. Her eyes snapped open, and then everything changed. The room trembled, not from weapons but from thought. Solara stood, her hair lifting like it was underwater, her eyes glowing silver white. James dropped his weapon. Mira raised hers. Solara didn't speak. She projected. "I do not want this war, but I will not die quietly." Mira screamed and fired, but the bullet stopped midair, crumpling like paper. Solara raised a hand, and Mira flew backward, unconscious. James stepped forward. It's not over, he said. No, Solara replied. But the truth is free now. They escaped to the lower hangar bay, stealing a small stealth shuttle and disabling the trackers. The ship shook behind them, alarms still ringing, but they didn't look back. James sat beside her as the stars stretched around them. So what now? He asked. She looked ahead. We find the truth, she said. We expose the coalition. And we wake the galaxy up. He nodded slowly. You really think they'll believe us? She turned to him. The stars reflected in her eyes. They don't have to believe. They just have to fear the silence as much as we do. Guard no more. Stars moved too fast. Inside the stolen stealth vessel, James Carter stared through the viewing port as light streaked past them like silver knives. The Vanguard Prime, once his home, his post, his pride, was now far behind them, spinning in deep orbit above a burning moon. He wasn't a soldier anymore. Not in the way the coalition wanted him to be. Not after what they tried to do to her. Not after what they tried to do to him. Across from him sat Solara, silent and still. She had barely spoken since they escaped. The faint glow in her eyes had dimmed. Her thoughts were quiet in his head, like a storm waiting for the wind to shift. What are you thinking? James finally asked. She didn't look at him. I'm listening. To what? To the ones who still remember who they are. James tilted his head. That means something? Or are you just being cryptic again? She finally looked at him. Every time the Hollow One touches someone, it takes something from them, a memory, a piece of their truth. But not all minds are weak. Some scream before they're erased. James frowned. And you're hearing those screams? She nodded. They're growing louder. The ship's navigation console beeped. They had reached the coordinates from Zalara's memory. A planet that didn't exist on any human star charts. It didn't even have a name. It was cold, gray, surrounded by a debris field of broken satellites and ancient wrecks. This was where the Arcanis had buried their secrets, and maybe where the Hollow One had first reached through. James brought the ship into orbit, eyes scanning the surface. What now? He asked. Solara stood. Now we go where my people swore never to return. He raised an eyebrow. Sounds fun? She almost smiled. They landed near what looked like the ruins of a black stone temple. Giant, half-buried doors were cracked open, revealing stairs descending into darkness. James took a breath. Why do I feel like the galaxy ends down there? Solara looked ahead. Because something was born here that was never supposed to live. They entered the darkness together. Inside the temple, gravity felt different. Time didn't flow normally. James kept checking his watch only to realize it had stopped. Strange symbols pulsed on the walls. They weren't written. They were alive, moving, changing. A voice echoed in his head. Not Solara's, not his. You carry the key. And the knife. James winced. Did you hear that? Solara nodded slowly. It's waking again. They reached a large central chamber. A floating structure hovered at its center. A black cube rotating silently with veins of glowing red lines crawling across its surface. This is the seed, Solara whispered. James stared at it. Seed. Of what? Of thought, of hunger, of the Hollow One's mind. James swallowed hard. Then why bring us here? Solara stepped forward. Because this is where it must end. Suddenly the chamber shook. Behind them energy pulsed. A dark figure emerged from the far corridor. Coalition armor, weapons drawn, and leading them, Captain Rowe. James raised his weapon, stunned. You followed us? Rowe stepped forward. Not, just followed. We never let you go. We knew you'd come here, that's why we let you run. James froze. Why? Rowe smiled grimly. Because now we know where it's hiding, and now we can destroy it. And her. Solara raised her hand. The air rippled, warping like liquid. One of the soldiers behind Rowe dropped his rifle and collapsed, holding his head. But Rowe didn't flinch. She activated a small device in her hand. Zalara screamed. James caught her as she fell. Blood dripped from her nose. Her mind, the bond, rattled, like a mirror shattering inside him. "What did you do?" he shouted. "Psychic disruptor," Ro said. "She's vulnerable. Finish this, Carter. Kill her. Fulfill your orders." James looked at Zalara. She wasn't glowing anymore. She looked human, afraid, alone. He stepped in front of her, aiming his weapon. Not at her. At Ro. "I don't take orders anymore." He fired. The device in Ro's hand shattered. The bond snapped back into place. James fell to his knees. And then, the seed exploded with light. Not physical light. Thought. Everyone screamed. Images flashed. A child locked in a lab. A soldier, dying alone in a trench. A mother crying over a folded flag. Fear. Memory. Pain. All of it, extracted. The hollow one was no longer just inside Zalara. It had touched them all. And now, it wanted James. It spoke in his voice. "You could burn their lies to the ground. Let me show you how." But Zalara's voice echoed louder. "Don't let it trick you. We fight it together." James stepped forward, arms shaking, eyes glowing faintly now. He raised his hand toward the seed. "I'm not your knife," he said. "And I'm not your key," Zalara added. Together, they touched the seed, and for one moment, there was only silence, then explosion. A wave of light pushed out in every direction. The hollow one screamed, not in sound but in thoughts collapsing. It wasn't destroyed, but it was sealed. For now. James awoke on the surface. The temple was gone. Zalara sat beside him, her hand resting on his. "What happened?" he asked, voice hoarse. "We closed the gate," she said softly. "But not forever." James nodded. "It'll come back." She looked at him. "And so will we." Weeks later, they were fugitives, but also legends. Across the outer systems, whispers spread. A human guard and a rogue alien royal defied the coalition. They faced the oldest darkness, and they lived. Some called them traitors, others called them protectors. But to James, one truth remained. He was no longer a guard. He was something more. And the stars had not seen the last of them.